episode of EPM Chronicles and Confessions. We have Matt Bradley here. Matt, could you please introduce yourself and your EPM journey?
Sure. Hi, Tim. Good to be with you. I'm Matt Bradley. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development for Oracle Enterprise Performance Management sets of products and services. So ultimately, I'm in charge of the strategy and delivery of all of EPM from Oracle globally. My journey started when I joined Hyperion back in 2000. So I've been in this space for, well, it's 23 years now, I guess. Yeah, coming up on 24. So very good.
Yeah, cool. That's really good. So this is kind of a quirky question. It's really, I find it difficult to explain to my mom what I actually do. EPM, what does it mean? Misconceptions, whatever. Have you got any kind of stories where misconceptions of what you do in terms of out there?
It's good. I mean, I do get it. You get it more, as you say, from folks who aren't in the business, so to speak. Yeah. So if you're talking finance, not a problem. They get it from that standpoint. Although when we're talking to IT in organizations, sometimes you have to basically explain a little bit more what exactly is EPM from that standpoint. And I struggled with my mom as well in terms of, and my family just says, well, this is what I do for a living. And they basically, but people pay money for that? And the answer is, yeah, they do. Quite a lot. It delivers quite a lot of value. So I think the most humorous one is actually when we were acquired by Oracle and we were presenting to the executive team, basically a portfolio overview. Here's all of the products that we have. In planning, they sort of get, and consolidations, they sort of get. But once you get into some of the more edge, they start go, people pay money for that? I would never use that. So we end up thinking, like, cost and profitability, we generally get a lot of, blank stares when we go through that tends to get a little bit more challenging to explain exactly the value that people get out of cost and profitability and the various use cases that you can do from that one. But
cool. Yeah. So what's been your biggest challenge in EPM and the solution you've done? I'm sure you've got loads to say there, but what's been the biggest one?
I mean, the biggest challenge we have is just keeping, to a certain extent, just keeping pace. I would say it's a fairly dynamic space. Things change, things stay the same, things change. It's kind of, depending on where you are on the spectrum, if you know what I mean. So to all intents and purposes, there are tensions between, consolidation is pretty static, hasn't changed dramatically. Yes, there's been some new regulations and some nuances around that particular area. But on the planning side, it's completely dynamic, changing all the time, and it's just how you manage the tension between the two. If you look at both extremes, from that standpoint. So I'd say that it's just, keeping pace. Things just don't stay the same. Obviously, as you scale to the number of customers that we scale to, we do see unique use cases from various customers. We had no idea you could use it to do that. And then trying to reconcile that with what our core mission is sometimes challenging. So I say that just the dynamic nature of the space.
Okay, thank you. Could you share us a success story of yours in your career, EPM career?
That's the only one.
Yeah. Well, you can do a number of them. No worries.
No, I mean, I think it's I mean, we've had tons of successes down through the years. I mean, when I started my career, I did the original. I was the original dev manager, not the original. I was the dev manager who helped launch Hyperion planning on the world. Originally started off with managing Pillar and managing, the Hyperion planning. It was pretty much 90% done by the time I arrived, and we basically finished it off. And I think getting that to be the successful product that it was in the marketplace was a huge achievement that we did. Obviously, our shift to SaaS. I've been able to pivot from, from what was traditionally an on-premise license model into a subscription-based model, and do that while still maintaining the on-premise solutions as well. Again, was another huge accomplishment that we can, when you look back in your career, you can basically go, okay, I can hang my hat on a couple of those things. I did introduce some new products to the market and did do a complete shift in business models. So,
sure. What's the most rewarding aspect of what you do?
Customers. And the customer's been successful in terms of what we do. We are developers, and we can sometimes get caught up in, the nuance of technology and how smart we are. But when it boils down to it, if it's not been used by customers, really doesn't matter. We've missed the mark. and just seeing the success that we've seen from customers, from, just across the board, from very, very large organizations who leverage and use our products to, some smaller organizations that we're doing now with, some joint work that we're doing with NetSuite. So we just span that sort of gamut. Those who've got resources that can pull off very sophisticated solutions, and those who've got, frankly, no resources who can pull off just as sophisticated style solutions. So, it's really just making sure the customers are the success that they have and the value that they get, and the the interactions that you have with them.
Cool. So are there any funny moments in your EPM career that you can share with the audience here?
Funny moments. I was just trying to figure out, to preserve the innocent and not necessarily, share too much from that standpoint. But I mean, it's an interesting question, because I was just really trying to figure out, was there anything specific from a customer setting that was basically, entertaining or whatever. And I wouldn't necessarily say there's anything terribly humorous in what we do. I mean, this is serious business, right? From that standpoint. I mean, there's always the odd demo that goes completely wrong. That you always sort of get into in terms of, okay, that didn't go quite as planned. But it was one I did spend some time trying to think of, some humorous incident where we did this, and there just wasn't anything that really sort of jumped out that really went, okay, that especially in the PM context.
Sure. Cool. Okay, this is quite an interesting question. So what's your inspiration to join the company? But as you know, this industry is very fluid. So what's your inspiration to stay in the company too? I mean, you've been there for a long time. Yeah.
I mean, the inspiration is, I mean, ultimately, I moved to the US in '93.
Right.
I think. I mean, working for various companies, trying to go west and make your fortune with a couple of small sort of private entities that we hope to go public, et cetera. And we bounced around a little bit, and ultimately needed to get into a more stable position with a growing family, et cetera, from that standpoint. And so ultimately, I had worked quite a bit in decision support within hospitals, helping through those particular pieces. Not some of it on like revenue management, some of it on cost accounting to a certain extent, and then was then attracted to Hyperion, who basically focused on that on a much broader basis outside of the narrow healthcare arena. And so that's kind of what attracted me to the position here. What has kept me here is the relationships that we built over the years. If I look at the team that I have in place, we've been working together for 15, 20 years.
Right.
From that standpoint, and it's just, we've got a great relationship with the team. We're able to move and do things forward. And even though we're part of say Oracle, we've been able to manage a certain level of independence. We have a way of doing things, and we've been given the latitude to continue to do those things. And as a consequence, it's just it's fun to go to work. It's fun to deliver the services. It's fun to continue to drive these things. And again, it goes back down to we are seeing value from customers, and they are. We're just back from our large conference in the UK, in the US, and so again, affirmations across the board and what we're doing, and we're doing the right thing and moving the services in the right direction. So a lot of those things are very, very rewarding. Actually, it's kind of interesting, but the cloud, we find it much more rewarding than say on-prem.
Right.
And that's really, it's the uptake of features is so much quicker and faster. So we can write some code this month, and next month we have a customer using it. A new feature, a new whatever. Whereas in the on-prem world, that could take, several years in order to get to critical mass. So the cloud, we've got a much, much tighter feedback loop, which is, a lot more rewarding for the developers.
Okay, cool. So as you know, the industry is very competitive. A lot of vendors, new entrants, a lot of things happening. How do you stay updated of the trends, of the things that's happening out there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, I've had this question sort of before, and we sort of welcome it, which may sound odd, but it basically keeps us on our toes, if you know what I mean. It's rather than the place getting static. I mean, we've gone through multiple waves of this. At Hyperion, we had a set of competitors, and we worked in order to keep pace with what they were doing. Some of them, coming out of Hyperion at some point in time. You had the Outlook Softs, you had the Datums, the various companies around at that point in time, and we managed to keep pace by continue just delivering product and services, and now we're into the a new set of competition from that standpoint. Some of them old friends, some of them new friends as it goes out forward, and everybody's really just trying a new approach to where they're going. We also have seen some new spaces come into the EPM arena, with companies like Blackline really established account reconciliation as a feature in this space, and we've managed to deliver something on a par, if not better, than what they have in that space. And so that definitely is something that we spend some time looking at competition, but frankly, we're really driven by customer, if you know what I mean. If the customer wants us to go in that direction, and that's something that competition has done, we'll do that. We're not necessarily into a copy. If you know what, they've introduced this feature, therefore we gotta respond and introduce that feature. We do have, to a certain extent, the luxury, I would say, of being considered a leader in the space.
Yes.
So we tend to drive the market rather than follow market, if you know what I mean. Although there are definitely are instances where we definitely have to pivot to a certain extent to address, like I say, a Blackline that came into the market, or something else that comes into the market that is somewhat unique. To a certain extent, Workiva, in terms of what they've done in that space, we basically had to adjust and address. But I would say most of our given where we are as a sort of the leader in the space, most of it is really driven from a market requirement. So new regulations, things like ESG, things like Pillar 2 tax, some of those things that really are driving the development, more so than, say, competition.
Thank you. So I consider yourself as one of the top, if not one of the top person in EPM in the world at the moment, in terms of influence, in terms of what you do. What's your key piece of advice for youngsters or new blood or new people coming into the industry in terms of learning and getting into this industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very dynamic industry, and I think it will go through some, further shifts, as we look out forward. I think the challenge we'd always encourage folks to do is first and foremost, you got to learn your business, right? So no matter what business you're in, you got to really have an understanding of what that business is. I think in finance, things have shifted. It used to be, as long as you had accounting and financial kind of constructs, you'd be fine. And now it's a case of that's not sufficient. You need to have a good grounding in that, but also then really understand the business that you're in, because you're becoming, the strategic partner, the co-pilot to the business. And so therefore you have to know and understand what's really driving your business. We've seen that ourselves in terms of Oracle with our finance team. So when you were a business model that was software maintenance license model and shift that to a subscription model, you now have to know and understand what that means, how that works, what's the dynamics inside of that market, and really, help partner and drive the business from that standpoint. So that's number sort of one is for accounting, but obviously really understand your business and close to the business to really establish some expertise and drive forward from that perspective. The other thing is we are sort of in a fairly dynamic space, as I mentioned earlier, with respect to technology. So it's keeping abreast of technology. And the technologies that folks need to pay attention to are some of the more machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever nomenclature we're going to put around that particular piece, because that's dramatically going to shift the skill sets. It's no longer a skill set of, if I'm very good at Excel, I'll get by, right? It's now a case of you don't necessarily have to be a data scientist, but you have to understand what that tool can provide to you and where to apply it and where not to apply it. And so there is going to be a little bit more emphasis on side of that area, in order to really differentiate yourself in the broader market. So if you're very good on finance, very good on your business, and you can bring some higher level data science to the table, I think that puts you up in a very, very strong position to work in the market on either side of the fence, be it inside of an organization or, should you have a need to become, say, a product manager or something to drive strategy from a product standpoint, then those are the key things that we're starting to look for in terms of value add.
Cool. So industry's changing. What do you see happening in the next 5 or 10 years in our industry in the future?
Yeah, I think one of the big areas that we will see is a lot more of this notion around connected planning.
Right.
So it's planning getting beyond just financial planning. Because I think organizations are starting to realize that you don't just plan in finance. You just don't have a finance plan. You have to have then the rest of the operational plans that work in tandem with that financial plan. And we basically will see that sort of expansion back out through. This is financially what we'd like to have, but operationally can we deliver, and really trying to address that tension that exists. So that's into things like, IPBX, the integrated business execution style planning. It's into, human capital style planning. It's into even sales planning at the front office, and really trying to address those particular challenges. Sure. And then obviously get into manufacturing and some of those particular issues, et cetera, from that standpoint. So I think that's one big trend that we anticipate and see quite dramatically is that. The other trend is, as you mentioned before, is the disruption from machine learning. So what we're seeing in the market today, and we don't anticipate it shifting, is the two sort of key drivers. One is the level of disruption in business will continue at a pace that we haven't seen before, be it, what's happening in the Ukraine and the impact on supply chain, be it Brexit that you guys went through in the UK, be it, similar things that will happen in other jurisdictions. The fact that we don't have a Speaker of the House here in the US, there's a whole bunch of uncertainty that's in the market, and that pace will continue. You'll obviously have got new competitors coming in, the continued globalization, just the pace of business is going to increase and continue to increase. With that, you also have got not an increase in staff. So you're asking your same team to do as much, if not more, than what you were before. Higher level analytics, quicker turnarounds, be able to plan and forecast much quicker, faster. We're seeing that trend away from annual budgets to rolling forecast moving from quarters to months, and in certain industries down to weeks. And you can't do that the old way, with bottom-up detailed plans. It's now got to be auto-generated, predictive style plans, those kind of sort of elements. We anticipate and expect to see machine learning being a productivity gain and augmenting what the individuals can fundamentally do. So a higher level of analytics, auto generation of forecasts, so some of those kind of things. And it's really going to be an interesting 2 to 3 years as we work our way through some of those challenges and see whether the machine gets accepted as an assistant, or whether it gets rejected because of lack of judgment or lack of clarity or fear or whatever from that standpoint. So I think those are probably the two big trends that we expect to see, in the market, that continue to move to much more deeper planning in the increase in frequency at which we do things, close the books quicker, faster, do everything much more effectively and efficiently, and try to drive productivity, leveraging the machine.
Thank you so much for this podcast. It was very fascinating and insightful, and hopefully we can do a few in the future. I will run some polls regarding it to get some feedback from the audience out there. And have a great day, Matt. And it was really nice talking to you.
Thanks very much, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.